I know what you're probably thinking. Another clickbait story, right? But I promise you this isn't that. In fact, if you're a parent, a husband, or just someone who trusts the people they love, I need you to listen carefully. This story starts off ordinary, a simple weekend trip, a smiling wife, a waving little boy. But by the time you're halfway through this video, you'll be questioning every photo in your family album. And by the end, you'll either never sleep the same again, or you'll finally understand what's been bothering you for years without you realizing it. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone you love and suddenly felt something was off? Like their smile was right, but their eyes weren't? Like they remembered the facts but forgot the feeling behind them? If you've ever had that moment of eerie uncertainty, that tiny whisper in your brain saying something's not right, then you're already halfway into this story. Because that's exactly where I found myself, standing in my own driveway, watching my wife come home with a child she insisted was our son. Only he wasn't. I swear to you, I'm not crazy. I know how this sounds, but that's why I'm telling you this. Not just to get it off my chest, but because I need you to see what I saw. I need you to feel it. I need you to understand why I'm questioning everything. You came to this video because the title grabbed your curiosity, and I promise you'll get the answer. You will. But you've got to let me tell it right. Because the truth didn't hit all at once. It crept in, slowly, whispering from the shadows of our home until I couldn't ignore it anymore. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Daniel, and until 2 months ago, I thought I had a perfectly normal life. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. But I had something better. A wife I adored, and a 7-year-old son, Jonah, who made me feel like I'd done something right in this world. My wife, Rachel, is the kind of woman who walks into a room and instantly makes it warmer. Smart, quick-witted, nurturing, the kind of mom who packed lunches with little notes and still found time to fix the broken drawer I kept ignoring. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. At least I thought so. Then came the weekend trip. Rachel's parents live 3 hours upstate. She told me Jonah missed his grandparents and she'd take him up Friday afternoon, spend the weekend, and be back Sunday evening. It was nothing out of the ordinary. They'd done it before. I kissed them both goodbye on the porch, waved as they pulled out of the driveway, and went back inside to catch up on overdue chores and football reruns. 3 days. That's all it was supposed to be. But Sunday evening came, and what stepped out of the car wasn't Jonah. He looked like him. Same height. Same curly brown hair. Even wore the same Spider-Man hoodie Jonah had begged for last Christmas. But the moment I looked into this boy's face, my stomach dropped. It wasn't his posture, it was too stiff. It wasn't his smile, it didn't quite reach his eyes. It was something deeper, something primal. A father knows his child. And this boy wasn't mine. At first, I didn't say anything. I stood there frozen, the smile still plastered on my face, watching Rachel open the trunk like everything was fine. She handed him his little suitcase. He walked toward me and said, "Hi, Dad." That voice, it was similar, sure, but there was a strange coldness to it, like he was mimicking what a son should sound like. Something deep in my gut recoiled, but I couldn't explain it, not yet. I know some of you are already judging me. You're thinking, maybe you just forgot what your kid looked like. Maybe he changed. But hear me out. What if I told you the birthmark on his left wrist was gone? That the tiny scar on his eyebrow from when he tripped to the park last spring vanished? What if I told you he didn't remember his favorite bedtime story? Or that he called his grandmother Nana when he always used to say Grammy? And most of all, what if your own wife looked you in the eye, laughed off your questions and said, "You're being ridiculous"? That's Jonah. Stop being weird. Then walked away like nothing happened. You'd start questioning yourself, wouldn't you? But I didn't stop there. I couldn't. Over the next few days, the signs kept piling up, subtle at first. He didn't know where the snack drawer was. He asked where his room was, even though we hadn't moved furniture in years. He didn't laugh at the same cartoon he used to quote word for word. He asked questions that didn't make sense, like, "Where's the dog?" We never had a dog. And here's where it got worse. I tried to talk to Rachel again. I told her something was wrong, that this wasn't our son. And her response? She got angry. Not scared. not confused. Angry. She said I was exhausted, that I needed sleep, that I was scaring Jonah. But she never once asked what I meant. Never once looked at him the way I did, with doubt. And I couldn't shake the feeling she knew. That's when I started digging. That's when I checked the photos on my phone, the ones from before the trip, and that's when things got really strange. In one picture, Jonah had green eyes. In another, blue. In some, his smile showed a missing tooth. In others, they were all there. It's like the photos were shifting, like they were being corrected. And when I checked the baby videos on our cloud account, one of them was just gone. Deleted. No trace. The one from his 5th birthday. The one where he opened the train set and cried with joy. I knew I'd watched it a dozen times.
But now, gone.
And Rachel swore it never existed. My heart started racing. I wasn't just doubting this boy. I was starting to doubt everything. But the moment I truly lost it, the moment everything changed, was the night I heard him whispering to someone in the hallway. I got out of bed, opened the door, and saw him standing there, eyes wide open, talking to nobody. Or so I thought, until I saw the hallway mirror fog up from the inside. And that's where I'm going to stop.
For now.
Because if you're still here, still watching, then you need to know what happened next. The truth is, I didn't just lose my son that weekend. I lost my marriage, my sanity, my grip on what's real. But in the next part, I'll show you the proof I found. The recording, the footprint under the bed, the final conversation that made me realize my wife didn't just bring home the wrong boy, she brought home something else entirely. I didn't sleep at all that night. After watching my son, or whoever he was, standing silently in the hallway, whispering to a fogged-up mirror that no one had touched, my mind just wouldn't let it go. I lay in bed next to Rachel, staring at the ceiling, listening to the subtle hum of the house around me. Every creak in the floorboards, every shift in the wind outside the window made me feel like something was crawling just under the surface of my reality. It wasn't just the boy anymore. It was the way Rachel had changed, too. She was colder, quieter. Her eyes didn't soften when she looked at me like they used to. She avoided eye contact. She didn't even flinch when I told her I'd found the missing video from Jonah's 5th birthday on an old USB hidden in my sock drawer, because I had. And in that video, Jonah clearly had a chipped tooth that the boy in our house no longer had. I needed answers. I started going back through old messages and photos on our phones, cross-referencing timestamps, checking things most people would never notice. Like whether the same toy showed up in multiple pictures. Whether the handwriting on his school notes matched what he was writing now. And it didn't. It was like this version of Jonah had learned about my son from a checklist. He got the basics right but missed the parts that mattered, the soul, the rhythm, the habits you can't fake. That's when I realized I wasn't just doubting the boy. I was starting to doubt her. Because if she brought him back, who is she really? Around that time, I decided to visit Jonah's school. It was a long shot, but I thought maybe the teachers had noticed something, too. The receptionist looked at me strangely when I asked about his last drawing project. I expected her to smile, maybe laugh, and pull out another rocket ship sketch like the hundreds he used to bring home. But instead, she hesitated, then said, "You mean the one with the faces?" My stomach turned. She pulled the paper from a folder, and I swear to you, it looked nothing like Jonah's usual crayon chaos. It was detailed, sharp, too precise for a 7-year-old. It showed 3 stick figures standing in a forest, all holding hands, all with hollow eyes. Behind them was something tall, something wrong. It looked like a man, but not quite. And scribbled in tiny writing along the border were the words, "Don't let him in again." I took a photo of the drawing when she wasn't looking, and that night, I confronted Rachel. I didn't come at her screaming or accusing. I just said, "He's not our son, and I think you know that." Her reaction wasn't what I expected.
She didn't yell.
She didn't even deny it. She just froze. Then, slowly, she smiled. But it wasn't her smile. It was the kind of smile you'd expect from someone who knows something you don't, and it sent chills down my spine. "You're not ready to understand," she whispered. "But he is ours. In a way." Then she went upstairs without another word. That phrase, "in a way," haunted me for days. As the week dragged on, I began to notice other changes in the house. The mirrors started to fog randomly, even when there was no steam or humidity. Lights flickered at the same time every night, 9:17 p.m. sharp. Our home security system began picking up movement in the basement, even though it was locked and empty. At least, I thought it was. I eventually worked up the nerve to check the basement one night, flashlight in hand. And I wish I hadn't. In the far corner, under the old shelves where we kept holiday decorations, I found a small pile of kids' drawings. Dozens of them. They were all signed Jonah, but none of them were his. These were darker, more detailed. They all showed the same forest, the same hollow-eyed figures, and that same tall shape in the background. And on one, written in red crayon, were the words, "You picked the wrong one." I felt like I was losing my mind. I stopped going to work. I didn't answer texts from friends. My world was shrinking fast, folding into this bizarre pocket where nothing made sense. And yet, I couldn't walk away, because part of me still hoped I was wrong. That maybe I was just tired or paranoid. Maybe trauma or stress was playing tricks on me. But the deeper I dug, the more impossible that became. I started finding holes in Rachel's story, too. Her phone had deleted messages, conversations with a contact saved only as M. Bank withdrawals she couldn't explain. Receipts from places she hadn't mentioned visiting. One of them was for a small roadside motel near a stretch of forest in upstate New York. The same forest Jonah had drawn over and over. I called the number on the receipt, pretending to be her brother, and the manager told me she had checked in with a child, but left alone. And then, just a few nights ago, something happened that shattered any lingering hope I had. I woke up to a noise, a low, humming sound, almost like a chant. I followed it down the hall, past Jonah's room, and stopped cold outside the guest room. The door was slightly open. Inside, Rachel stood facing the mirror, the same one that had fogged on its own before. But this time, she was whispering something, repeating it like a ritual. The boy was behind her, watching me in the reflection. Except in the reflection, his eyes were black. No whites. Just void. He raised a finger to his lips, silently telling me to be quiet. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over myself, and when I looked back again, the room was empty. No Rachel. No boy. Just the mirror, and in it, a single word drawn in the condensation. Soon. That's where I'm at now. I don't know who to trust. I don't know what's real anymore. I check the locks 3 times before bed. I keep the mirrors covered. And every night I watch that boy, my son, or whatever he is, sleep with one eye half open. I don't know what Rachel brought back that weekend. I don't know why she did it. But something tells me this isn't just about my family anymore. Whatever this is, it's bigger, older, and it's only just beginning. The days that followed were the worst I've ever lived through, and believe me, I've had my share of tough times. Every morning felt like walking through a waking nightmare where nothing was safe or certain. I started noticing things in the house that couldn't be explained by logic or memory. Objects moved places they hadn't been, whispers echoed through empty rooms, and the air always felt colder, heavier, like the house was breathing in a way it never did before. But what truly broke me wasn't the house itself. It was what happened when I finally confronted Rachel again. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and the shadows grew longer, I found her sitting in Jonah's old room, clutching a small, worn-out journal that I'd never seen before. Her hands trembled, and when I asked about it, she looked at me with a mixture of fear and something else I couldn't place. Remorse, maybe? She told me it was Jonah's diary, something she'd found at her parents' house, but never shown me. My heart pounded as she flipped through the pages, revealing innocent entries that soon spiraled into chilling accounts of dreams, nightmares, and a man in the woods who waited behind the mirror. I asked her how this could be. How could our son write about things I'd never heard of? That's when she whispered, "He's been trying to warn us." I wanted to believe her, but the look in her eyes told me this was bigger than any of us. Then, the unexpected happened. I received a message on my phone from an unknown number with just one line. "He's not who you think." At first, I thought it was a prank, but the timing was too precise. It was the night I had the dream. One of those vivid, terrifying dreams where everything feels painfully real. In the dream, Jonah stood at the edge of the forest from his drawings, and the tall figure with black eyes emerged from the trees. The figure didn't speak but reached out a hand toward me, a silent demand. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, and my phone buzzed again. This time, a short video appeared, showing a shadowy figure standing behind Rachel as she slept, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. I showed her the video, expecting shock or denial, but instead, she simply nodded, almost relieved. "It's always been there," she said softly. "And now it's awake." From that moment, the line between reality and nightmare blurred completely. I wasn't just fighting to get my son back. I was fighting to save my family from something ancient, something that had been lurking just beyond our sight. But the biggest twist came when I decided to dig deeper into Rachel's past. I called her parents, hoping to find answers, but the conversation took a strange turn. Her mother's voice was calm, almost too calm, when she told me Rachel had a twin sister who disappeared when they were kids. I'd never heard about this twin before. Rachel never mentioned her. The idea that Rachel had a lost sister added a new layer of mystery, and suddenly, everything made a little more sense. What if this wasn't just about a boy or a forest spirit? What if Rachel's family hid secrets darker than I ever imagined? The more I probed, the more I uncovered strange photos hidden in old albums, pictures of two identical girls standing in the same woods from Jonah's drawings, their faces obscured or scratched out. And worse, neighbors whispered about a tragic accident, a disappearance that was never solved. Was it possible that the different boy Rachel brought home wasn't just some stranger, but connected to this lost twin? That maybe, just maybe, our family was caught in a cycle of things we couldn't control, things that crossed the line between reality and something else entirely? As if that wasn't enough, one night I caught Jonah, or whoever he was, speaking in a language I didn't understand, chanting words that sent a cold chill down my spine. When I tried to stop him, his eyes flashed black, and he said in a voice that wasn't his own, "The door is open. You shouldn't have seen this." At that moment, Rachel appeared behind me, her face pale, and whispered, "We're out of time." Suddenly, it wasn't just about uncovering the truth, it was about surviving it. I realized then that whatever had taken my son, or replaced him, was waiting for something, and it needed us all to play our part. I never imagined that chasing the truth about my son would lead me into a world that felt more like a nightmare than anything I'd ever seen in real life. But as the days unfolded, everything I feared came crashing down all at once. The climax of this twisted story hit when I confronted Rachel in the very heart of the forest that Jonah had drawn countless times, the same forest where, as the diary and the drawings hinted, everything started. I followed her one night, driven by a mix of desperation and dread, and what I found shook me to my core. There, deep in the shadows of towering trees, was a clearing lit by an eerie, unnatural glow. Rachel stood in the center, holding that worn journal close to her chest, chanting words I didn't understand. Beside her stood the boy, his eyes no longer just black. They shone with something ancient, otherworldly. The air was thick, vibrating with a force I couldn't explain. I shouted her name, and for a moment, her face softened, but then she looked at me with eyes that weren't quite hers. "He's part of us now," she whispered, voice like a ghost. "The twin never left. She's been waiting." That's when everything clicked. The missing twin, the strange behaviors, the shifting memories. Rachel wasn't hiding just a secret. She was guarding a gateway, a link between our world and something else. The boy wasn't just a stranger. He was the embodiment of that other world, the twin's shadow, brought back to bridge the gap. I realized that the different boy was not a replacement for Jonah, but a protector, a warning. The forest, the drawings, the haunted mirrors, they were all signs of a thin veil between realities, and Rachel had crossed it. I had to make a choice: fight this impossible truth and lose my family, or accept it and find a way to protect them. With trembling hands, I stepped forward and took the journal from Rachel, reading the final words aloud, words of acceptance, hope, and an ancient promise to keep the darkness at bay. In that moment, the boy reached out and touched my hand, and I saw it, not just his eyes, but Jonah's spirit shining behind them. The blackness faded, replaced by the warmth of the child I loved. Rachel collapsed, tears streaming down her face as she whispered apologies I could barely hear. The veil lifted. The forest grew silent. And as we walked home, the house no longer felt cold or empty, but alive with the promise of healing. I understood then that love isn't always about holding on to what we expect, but embracing the mysteries we don't yet understand. But here's the twist. The story doesn't end with a simple reunion. A few weeks later, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, I found a faded photograph I hadn't seen before. It showed Rachel as a child, standing next to a girl who looked just like her. But the girl's eyes, they were the same black void I'd seen in the boy. And behind them, in the blurry background, stood a tall figure with glowing eyes watching from the trees. I realized then that some doors, once opened, never truly close. The twin wasn't gone. She was still out there, waiting, watching, protecting us, maybe, or biding her time. That realization left me with a profound truth. Families are complicated, sometimes haunted by secrets that span generations. But what matters most is the choice to face those secrets together, to hold on to hope even when the darkness feels overwhelming. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that love can stretch beyond reality, beyond fear, beyond anything you can imagine. And sometimes, the greatest strength lies in accepting the unknown and fighting for the light in your own way. So, if you've watched this far, thank you. I hope my story reminds you to trust your instincts, to cherish the people you love, and to be brave enough to look into the shadows, even when you're afraid of what you might find. Because sometimes, the answers we seek come wrapped in mystery, and it's up to us to keep moving forward, no matter how dark the path gets.